All right, so this is gonna be my top list for the spring. This is gonna be my only list for the spring. It's gonna include everything that really stood out to me. It's not gonna have anything that was just another citrus, just another green scent. Everything on here was worth trying. Even if I didn't totally like it or wasn't over the moon about it, I feel like it did provide an experience to try it out, and I definitely think it's worth it for certain types of people out there. Fragrance is always very subjective, and I always try to keep that in mind when I make these lists. There's no sponsorships, no affiliates, nothing, no discount codes, nothing that's going to influence my decision and what I pull out. I'm just literally going through my mind and remembering, and whatever was worth remembering was worth trying, in my opinion. Let me start this off with Beach Hut Man. I wore that for a week here recently. Really love that scent. Super green. Really got a nice mint note. Almost has like a humid air. Kind of like you're in a sauna, but you're smelling this super green effect. Very fresh, and it has very good performance with a lot of compliments. I would say this one definitely rings a bit more mature. It's also not blind buy safe at all. I feel like it's kind of more risky. You could get hipster toothpaste from it. Could be underwhelming to you, but it's definitely worth sampling. I really respect the performance. One of my most complimented scents. Really projects, and it is very unique. Next up is Santal 33. I don't know why I put off trying this one for so long. I tried this one later on, even though it's such a talked about fragrance. Santal 33, a lot of people hate it. Probably one of the most polarizing fragrances I'm going to have on this list, but definitely something you'll never forget. Is definitely worth trying for me too, because now I actually really love this scent. Now my wife, she's a very tolerant person. She even likes things like Amouage, Silver Oud, and a lot of animalics. She likes pretty much everything. She can't stand Santal 33, so when I wear it, I can only wear it when she's not around, and she likes that because she considers it to be like a woman repellent. A lot of people get pickle. I'll admit I do kind of get pickle from it. I understand totally where people are coming from, but I get much more of like an earthy cucumber smell. It feels like a fragrance that I would find at a farmer's market, literally. It's not an edible. It does smell perfumey, and I think that a lot of that is this almost pine-esque freshness with the cucumber and with the moist earth kind of all working together. But performance is insane, very unique. There's nothing else like it out there, and I just love wearing it. It feels so classy. It's one of those few fragrances that just feels super New York to me. Classy, put together, clean, and there's just something so satisfying about smelling it. Like I can't get enough. Almost like cucumber water on a hot day. It's just this really satisfying scent to me, and I think it works amazing in the spring. Next up is, of course, King of the Spring, Creed Green Irish Tweed. My favorite fragrance of all time. I'll admit the performance isn't necessarily the most satisfying part of it. I do wish it performed a bit better, but to me it's just the smell of the spring for men. It's very handsome, very put together, as a classy fougere-like quality, and there's nothing like it. I've tried the alternatives from like Armaf and Montagne. It just feels like there's nothing like the original. I don't know what they did, but that opening, that first hour that I spray Green Irish Tweed is just the best scent I've ever smelled in my life, and I want to smell like that all the time. Just a super bright, realistic, green, fresh scent that smells like grass fields with a bit of a almost fougere, classy, timeless kind of quality. Very bright and refreshing, and then in the dry down it becomes much more like humid earth, but it's super realistic. Like you could smell the grass and the humidity and everything mixing together to make this super realistic nature setting. Very handsome fragrance, amazing classic masculine fragrance. If you haven't tried the real deal, worth trying 100%. Next up is Greenwich Village. I love Greenwich Village, one of my favorite freshies of all time. I get amazing performance out of it. Very unique scent. Not the most masculine thing ever. I actually can admit it leans slightly feminine to me, but it has almost this cotton candy-like sweetness. Kind of makes me think of how a turquoise Fruit Loop would taste. And I know that sounds disgusting to a lot of people. I would say this is a challenging fragrance. It's not blind buy safe, but it just smells so good. It's like a turquoise Fruit Loop with a lot of layers of complexity and freshness and greenness to it. Things going on. It's actually very deep and complex. I even get some that's pretty natural. I don't get something synthetic. And I just can't stop smelling it. Super good performance. Lots of people give positive remarks on it. I think this one could work in high heat summer, but It feels like it could become a bit sweet for that. It just would work better in those 60 to 80 degree days. It's also a very sporty fragrance. Like, I feel like if I was into golf or tennis or any sport like that, that super casual kind of dress, I would wear Greenwich Village to those types of things. Next up is Creed Aventus, and I feel like I'm going to lose people here because a lot of people already tried it, or I'm kind of burnt out on Aventus DNA. Like, I'm done with Aventus, and a lot of you already tried this one. All I could say is compliments galore. Like, I don't really wear fragrances for compliments, but this one blows everything out of the water for me. I don't know why. Like, I always hear imagination as some compliment super beast, but to me, Aventus just gets more compliments in one day than my entire collection will in a whole year. A lot of you know what it smells like: pineapple, birch, smoky pineapple with an oak moss, kind of almost vetiver-esque undertone with a woodiness, but really just that pineapple, fresh, black pepper, sharp scent. Very masculine and nice. I honestly don't know why people like it so much around me. I don't really get it. Like, I'm not a super Aventus fan, but when I wear it, it is an experience to just see how much positive feedback I get when I wear Aventus, and I think it just works great in the spring. Next up is another 13. Now, I was literally a bit on the fence. Should this go in high heat summer? Should this go in spring? So I feel like this one just crosses those boundaries a bit, but I do feel just generally it's going to work better in the spring for me. It smells like magazine paper to me, like a really clean magazine paper, almost like a recently clean swimming pool, kind of chlorine in the air smell. And that might be a lot in 100-degree weather. Like, it might be a little sickening. I plan to test it out and find out, but another 13 is just the ultimate clean smelling fragrance. I don't want to do a list of like date night fragrances or going on a date fragrances, because I feel like there's only one, and it's another 13. Like, I feel like if I were still dating, I wouldn't want to show up being the cologne guy. I wouldn't want my fragrance to be a topic of discussion. I'd want something subtle that just smells like clean human, that just makes me smell good as a human being. Another 13 is that. Like, I feel like if I got this in the air, I would think, you smell good, not the cologne you're wearing smells good, because it's just the ultimate smell of clean. And it's an amazing fragrance to try, and it's not like anything else out there. If you don't like it, it's going to be because it's kind of hard to detect. It's a very subtle scent. Next up is Imitation Man by Amouage. I feel like this is the most underrated fragrance that I've tried. The violet is very good in this one. Okay, violet's like a purple flower, and you know it when you smell it, okay? And it has a very vintage feel. This fragrance is a vibe, but it has that violet going with citrus, with like almost a plasticky leather component and an animalic. There's a lot going on with Imitation Man. It's the most complex fragrance I've ever worn. It changes a lot in the lifespan of it. I've shown it to people that really like the opening but not the dry down, people that really like the dry down but not the opening, and people like me just like the whole experience of wearing it because of that. Almost has that Delina tart rose with like a leathery component. Very beautiful scent, very worth trying, not like anything else out there. Perfect for the spring, and I feel like when I show this fragrance to people, they definitely have a strong reaction to it, whether that be good or bad, but most of the times it's actually been good. Like, people seem to really like this scent, but nobody talks about it. Next up is Frederick Malle Carnal Flower, one of the best performing fragrances on this entire list. The stuff is super strong. It's a gardenia, but it really picks up a lot of the green. It's definitely got the white floral going, and I know that can scare a lot of men away, but it has so much green in it. It really smells like you're in a greenhouse. Like, literally, that's it. You ever been in Home Depot and you go into the greenhouse kind of area and you smell the air? Like, Carnal Flower is like taking that air, condensing it down, and punching it as hard as you can. It smells so alive. Has this watery, kind of almost natural coconut vibe to it, too, that just makes it super satisfying, almost like you're walking through a greenhouse and somebody's spraying the mist in the air and you're getting the water with the green and everything. Super alive. I get a lot of positive feedback when I wear it. I ask people if they think it's feminine. And really their response is they're focused on how good it smells. They're not really thinking about masculine or feminine. But in my opinion, it does go maybe a little feminine, but that green, it's not super feminine to me, and it's one of the best spring fragrances ever for sure. Next up is Ganymede, something else, something totally different but sensible, almost like a sand dune freshie, like a sandiness to it. Because it has minerals and it has leather, but it's very fresh and bright. So it all kind of gives this gritty tone. Like, it's hard to describe it. That's why people say they think of outer space. I feel like the reason they say that, or the reason I go there, is when I think of Mars, I think of like a sand dune, like a sandiness, but it's really fresh. So it has this gritty nature. Unlike anything else out there, it has a dose of cumin in there, but it's not bothersome to me at all. It really feels fancy when I smell it, very deep and complex, makes me think of a super fancy office building, very sensible, like showing this to people around me. It's just one of those fragrances that smells really good. Even though it's super creative and from another world and totally different than anything out there, it has this very sensible, office safe kind of feel to it with really good performance. Definitely worth trying. Next up is Hacivat by Nishani. Now, I don't really like this fragrance, I'll be honest. This is one of those ones that was worth trying, but I just don't really like it. And people say it smells like Aventus till they're blue in the face, and I don't get that at all. Maybe for like 1 minute on the opening, it kind of has that pineapple Aventus smell, but it really just smells like if you took Aventus and you took the pineapple completely out of it, and you were just left with the oak moss base. Like, it's just an oak moss fragrance, very earthy. Very different. It's not like anything else out there. Even though it's earthy, it doesn't go into that vetiver, like dirty, kind of really old school feel. Like, it has this earthiness like oak moss. Like, it's an oak moss fragrance, and it's oak moss prominent. Gets a ton of positive feedback, and I don't know why, but it does, and it has really good performance. It's not like anything else out there. Worth trying, in my opinion. Definitely worth trying. I plan to revisit this one and wear it for a week and see if it grows on me. Now we got Royal Mayfair. This is another one of those really challenging, polarizing fragrances. Definitely old school for somebody who's into fragrances that wants a posh vibe. It's very Rolls Royce. It's very Sherlock Pipe kind of old man kind of vibe. Very like British Garden and French in the 1800s romance kind of thing. Like, this is for somebody that wants something posh and different. The best way I could describe this is if you think of like pine, like a pine tree, smelling that with rosewood. Like, that would be the best way to describe it for me. It has a very vintage wood feel, and it has a freshness from the pine, and it has a bit of a rose kind of in it. But ultimately, it feels like an old school white fougere that's just very classy. I love Royal Mayfair. The opening is a bit medicinal, almost hits you like a Vicks bomb, but then when it dries down, that woodiness with that pine and that rose, it's just such a beautiful fragrance. It's such a vibe, and it's so perfect for the spring. One of my favorite fragrances of all time. It's in my top 10 of niche, and I love it. Next up is Burlington 1819. Now, I need to revisit this one. I do. I didn't like it because on the dry down, you get a lot of cumin, a lot of armpit smell. So I would say this one's not blind buy safe. And that armpit smell, that's a correlation I make. Fragrance is subjective. Somebody could smell it and not make that connection. But I always just felt like a dirty, like you get in an Uber car and it has a stank to it. Kind of give me that kind of smell deep in the dry down. The opening I really like, though. It has a grapefruit with tagine kind of smell, almost like you put a bunch of spices on a grapefruit and it just made it super satisfying and delicious. And you're having that on a hot summer day or like in the spring. I think that's what the opening is like, but then the dry down, it really changes. I put it in the spring because of that cumin-centric dry down. I feel like in the heat, it can become a bit much. But in the spring, Burlington 1819, I feel like it's worth trying. Love it or hate it, it's something else. It's not just another citrus. Next up is Tea Matcha 26. This, if I could just summarize it and be quick to the point. The opening is so creamy fig with a bit of that green tea that it just smells like mint ice cream to me. Like, that's what it is to me. Of course, it's not 1-1 to mint ice cream, but if I tell you, you spray yourself with a cologne and you're projecting mint ice cream, I feel like I'm getting you really in the ballpark of what this fragrance is about. Not the most masculine thing in the world, but something else and something that smells really good. People will say matcha latte, and I get that more into the dry down, like about 2 hours in, that herbal green tea starts coming up and riding on top of the mint ice cream, creamy fig kind of smell. Beautiful fragrance, really calming, really nice. I get amazing performance out of it. I get 9 hours, and I get really good projection, lots of positive feedback. There's nothing like Matcha 26. It's the only creamy fragrance that I like. I don't like Gris Chanel, EDP. I don't like Musk Therapy by Initio. The only thing creamy that I really like is Matcha 26. I think it's totally unique and it's hard to compare it to anything else out there. Beautiful fragrance. Next up, we have Bleecker Street by Bond Number 9. This is a violet leaf fragrance. You're going to see people compare it to Fahrenheit a lot, and it doesn't smell like Fahrenheit at all, but Fahrenheit is the other violet leaf centric fragrance. And if you smell violet leaf, to me, it smells like the vegetable section at a grocery store. And in a perfume, it has this old school, almost neutral green, fresh vibe. And it almost can have a petrol kind of sense, like almost like a gasoline sense. Bleecker Street just focuses on violet leaf big time. It's super center violet leaf, but it also has blueberry in it. I think Bleecker Street is an amazing fragrance. I love it. It's very classy. I don't think it's talked about enough. It just feels like it would fit somebody who really likes gentle fluidity silver, green Irish tweed, Dior Home Intense, somebody that likes classy fragrances. I feel like Bleecker Street, it would be a welcomed addition to their collection. Definitely plan to revisit that one. Next up is Sartorial by Penhaligon's. I was a bit hesitant to put this in there because it basically smells like a niche version of Brut for Men. So it's like smelling the sample wasn't that surprising, but at the same time, it was really nice. Like Brut for Men is really nice. And this has like a honeyed component and it almost has like a steamy iron component. Things added to Brut for Men and like a depth and complexity to it. There's also nothing else that does that type of fougere DNA, and if they do, I bet you they don't do it as good as Penhaligon's Sartorial does. Feels like it would really be something to wear in the spring, and definitely a great fragrance, and I feel like it was worth trying for me. Now we got Rose 31. Rose 31 is a guilty pleasure fragrance to me, just such a beautiful rose and cumin fragrance. On the beginning, I get hit with more rose. In the dry down, I start to get cumin and an earthiness, and it's like a spicy, almost like Indian-esque rose fragrance, like a dirty rose to some extent. It has this, it's rose, but it's something else. Like I saw one review where a guy says, somebody spilt roses in my nachos and I'm here for it. And I'm like, dude, I totally get what you mean. Like there's that cumin in this, it kind of has that stinky, almost food kind of quality that you would get when you eat like a plate of nachos. But then you have the rose coming in and freshening it and balancing it out. And the cumin gives me this masculine, very manly energy. And then the rose gives me this classic femininity energy. And it's like they're in perfect balance, like this yin-yang fragrance. And honestly, just the scent of Rose 31 is so addictive to me. And I can't think of any fragrance like Rose 31. Was it worth trying? For me, yes. And now I'm into it and have a bottle of it. Baie 19 by Le Labo. This is a very unique fragrance. I need to spend more time with this one, but it's worth trying for sure because there's nothing else like it out there. Smells like a rain. I know I say a lot of fragrance smell like a rainy day. I kind of say that a lot about T-Noir 29 and stuff like that. And I think a lot of things give the impression of rain for me. But this actually smells like rain for real. Like I'm for real this time. Smells like a rainy day. You come out, the weather's a bit humid, and you're smelling the rain in the air. Mix that with the smell of clay, which is a weird note to pick up for the first time. But for me, my brain immediately went to like rocks. So it made me think of like a rainy day sitting by a river, and I actually got more green than I thought I was going to get. Like there's juniper in this and stuff like that, but it really gives me a bit of a perfumey green. So it's really a very close to nature. Everything is blooming, very good rainy day fragrance. And I love Baie 19. I think it's great. I definitely want to spend more time with it. Next up is Megamare by Ordo Parisi. And I feel like people are going to say this one should have went in the summer, but this fragrance is so strong. I'm not going to wear it when it's 100 degrees outside. It's a lot, but I'll say this. I've been doing this thing where I wear fragrances for a week and review them after I give them more of a chance. When I first tried Megamare, I did not like it. This is not blind buy safe at all. I felt like it gave Poseidon vibes, a bit too strong. I didn't like the dry down, kind of had a fixative smell. But now that I'm revisiting Megamare and I've been wearing it for multiple days in a row and looking at the bottle and the rawness of the cap and the color of the liquid, I love Megamare times 1,000. When I first sprayed it, I was like, this is a bit too serious, a bit too sterile, like Agent in the Matrix vibe. But now that I've been wearing it, there's just nothing like it. It's such a clean, beautiful scent. I absolutely love Megamare. It's an accurate take on the ocean in a very raw form. There's nothing like making it pretty. There's nothing making it beach. It's just very serious ocean, very clean. Almost has a very subtle type of way about it. Reminds me of another 13 in that sense, but it's super strong. Like one spray, you're good for 12 hours plus. I love this fragrance. I absolutely love it, and I'm gonna keep it and always have it. Next up is Amouage Portrayal Man. Now this is a spin-off of Imitation Man. They're both violet fragrances with violet floral, both very purple. But what I would say is different about Portrayal Man is it has violet leaf, so it has that vegetable green kind of quality. And it's just more masculine, more rainy day weather. Definitely something else. Portrayal Man was one that I tried that just stood out to me. I think that's because it is a violet with that violet leaf, and how everything's constructed is super classy, old school, and nobody around you. Like, I never smelt anything like it. I prefer Imitation Man. I feel like Imitation Man is good for those bright, sunny spring days, but Portrayal Man will just slap on those rainy, overcast days. For designer, I'm going to be limited. I know there's things out there that people are going to rave about. Like, I wrote a bunch down, like L'Immensité, Lovers. I feel like people are really going to like those, but ultimately, like, when I tried those two, I just wasn't blown away. There's one, John Varvatos Vintage, that I feel like almost made the cut for me. I feel like that one's underrated. It's also a cheaper fragrance. I think you can get it for like $30. And it's really nice. Like, it's almost a blue fragrance mixed with a fougere fragrance. It's almost like if Creed Viking, instead of being red, it was blue. That's a very bad description of this one, but it kind of gives you what I'm trying to communicate to you. John Varvatos Vintage is great. Barely made the list. Terre d'Hermes in all of its forms would be the designer for the spring. Like, that would be one of the number ones. I like the Parfum. I haven't tried all of them, but you can go into any Sephora and try Terre d'Hermes. And just that orange peel with that earthiness and that classic masculinity. When I first smelt it, I thought it was a bit too earthy, but now I've learned to really appreciate the scent, and I think it's just it. Like, for spring, for designer, Terre d'Hermes, man. Like, that's one of the things for me. It is kind of mature. I would think, like, if you're 20, it might be a little too old for you. But for me, I just love that fragrance. It's something else. Very creative. I consider it a masterpiece and as good as really any niche out there. Next is Bvlgari Gyan. Now, this is an amazing fragrance that nobody talks about. It is a bit more mature, but it's such a classy, beautiful, red soapy fragrance. Gives me a slight just color red with soapiness. And then with that, I get earthiness from the patchouli. There's really nothing else like it. And I just feel so classy, so modern, so super masculine. Gyan to me is one of the best designers of all time. I don't want to say this like right now, but I will say it. I feel like if you really sat me down and I had to pick one best designer of all time, it would be Gyan. I think Gyan is absolutely phenomenal. Totally worth trying. Prada L'Homme. Prada L'Homme is great if you're into like Dior Homme Intense and that type of almost lipsticky, powdery style DNA. I feel like Prada L'Homme is like the closest you can get to a very fresh spring fragrance that really pulls that off well. I don't know why, but I always think of sparkling Coca-Cola when I smell it, like a Coca-Cola amber with that almost lipsticky iris going around it. Sounds horrible. I'm probably like making the description really bad, but Prada L'Homme is great. I think it's a great smelling fragrance. From Montagne, you already know how I feel about a lot of the fragrances, but Sicilian Tobacco and Torino 2022, I plan to really wear this spring. Sicilian Tobacco is like Naxos, but it's not as sweet. It's not as boozy. It doesn't have that almost coconutty, honeyed component. And because of that, the freshness of Naxos is able to really come out. I feel like Sicilian Tobacco is Naxos for the spring. Like, it's a fresher take on Naxos DNA. Love that fragrance. In Torino 2022, I love that one as well. It's not as serious as the original to me. A bit sweeter, lighter, more fun. I'm actually right now, I have the original and I have the Montagne version. They're different. I kind of feel like I'm preferring the Montagne a little bit, but that's just because I like that it's a saffron fragrance that's light and playful, something that I could really easily wear in the springtime. So from Montagne, those are definitely two recommendations that I would have for ones to try. I also think their take on Ganymede was really well done. I know like my friend from work preferred the original, but me and my wife both preferred the Montagne because I feel like it had just more of the leathery, more depth, and more. It wasn't as light as the regular Ganymede, but I feel like the Montagne version of Ganymede is solid for the springtime, and definitely their take on Matcha 26 is really good too. That was one of the closest things to a 1-1, and I really think Matcha 26 is amazing DNA. But it's hard to justify the price for it for me, but I can see why some people are over the moon about it. But Matcha 26, even though it's not really for me, it just feels like one of those DNAs that's just very worth having. It's very nice and calming and relaxing. Almost like the room spray you'd find at a wellness spa to me. Like very clean and relaxing and nice and casual. I feel like the Montagne version of that is really good as well. So that's it for this. The spring list is finally done. These are only things that I was really over the moon about, that really stood out to me and were worth trying. Yeah. Anyways, feel free to comment with things that you look forward to wearing this spring, things you look forward to trying. Subscribe for future content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Ricky!